what do you look for in leaders? How do you find good leaders? Kind of the development. Hello and welcome to Questions and Answers with Red River Leadership. I am Nolan and...
Hello, my name is John. Good to see you guys. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah. Well, some fun things we get to talk about today. I'm super psyched. John, you want to get us started here?
Yeah, just to jump in a little bit, if you're brand new, if you're just jumping on for the first time, again, Nolan Weiss and John Dahl, and we are founders of Red River Leadership, which is a platform for churches, really for any business for that matter. We dig into leadership quite a bit as we go on these things, but specifically speaking to church leadership, and then worship technology. We just found over the years that we wanted to help create kind of a central hub spot for just really good training and coaching and conversation. And we do Zoom calls with churches all over the nation, helping them work through very specific things they're going through. And just part of this overall Red River Leadership is we do a Friday morning Q&A where we just kind of dig in on a couple of the topics and questions that are coming in from churches that we work with. And we also get comments on YouTube and on Facebook, and we get emails all the time with different questions. So those kind of make up the content of what happens here on Fridays.
Absolutely. Well, today we get to talk a little bit about music, and we'll talk a little bit about leadership. One of the questions that comes in different forms, one just recently on one of our consulting calls was, what do you look for in leaders? How do you find good leaders? Kind of the development, a lot of different questions. That's just the holy buckets, the direction.
Yeah.
We're going with that. Do you want to add any more to that question wise?
Well, just that it's a really good question. I think we all deal with the finding of good leaders, whether that's kind of a volunteer unpaid role, or if you're looking for your next hire, your next staff position that you're trying to fill. There's just kind of some general qualities that Noel and I have talking over the years have been drawn to. And so, yeah, we can just dig in on some of those.
Yeah. What do you look for in a leader, John?
I'm really attracted to somebody that, when you're talking about a project or something that's going on, and the person just adds value to it and has really good conversation about it, helps you think outside the box on it. But then more importantly, it's action for me. If that person, after we leave that conversation and we say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then they just run with it and then come back to me like a day later saying, hey, did you know we could actually do this, this, or this? Well, then, man, suddenly that whole process, that whole thought, the whole plan we were creating together can be multiplied very quickly. And not only coming up with the ideas afterwards, but then like starting to implement those in and bringing whatever it is into play, into what we do every week. So somebody who shows up early or as soon as we are setting up for a recording or for a rehearsal, whatever it is, and they're already there and they're already working on something and finding solutions. And so I know that's a lot kind of in one, but just the ability to take initiative and just to act and to do things without being asked is a really big role.
And I'd say in a church setting, often you can find those people before you even ask them to be part of your team.
Right.
Like, it's the people who are there early and kind of digging around, asking questions, just want to be part of the vibe, part of the community.
Right. How can I help?
Yep. Yeah. People, when you're done and you're tearing down, they're still there. It's not, if they're already started in a small role, it's not like, okay, I did my job, I'm done, or that's not my job. They're there. What else can I do? How else can I help? Yeah. As John and I were talking about this in prep for this call today, this phrase that I learned just keeps on going through my head, and it's what you do with anything, you do with everything. Yeah. And so you could talk about it in dating. There's those memes out and advice like how the person you're out with treats the wait staff at a restaurant. how they tip. Those things speak. Maybe it's only a coffee and it's $1 tip or something, but that speaks volumes about how they're going to treat people in your relationship and just throughout their lives. And so I think about when we're looking at leaders, you can kind of get a sense of who they are and how they show up, whether they have a role or not.
Right.
I've gotten in my role here at Calvary, I've gotten to create positions that we put out and people apply for, create job descriptions, and which is super hard to figure out in such a vast arena of life and ministry. But it always came down to this for me is I just want to find people to put around me who are as nerdy about their thing as I am about me. I want nerds. I want people who, like me, they find an opportunity, a problem, an obstacle, whatever you want to call it. If something is bothering me that I need to figure out, I'm going to have 40 pages open on YouTube and Google trying to figure out that one thing. And you just kind of get in this hole, this I call a black hole of information. People who are like that about their area. So if I say, I don't really know, this is a great example. I'm going to shout out my buddy Chris. He just started hanging around. And it was a mention from a pastor who's like, hey, this guy's pretty neat. I think he'd be interested in what you're doing. And because he's techie and all this. And I brought him in, showed him what I knew about the light console that I was working on. And he left and he's like, yeah, I'm going to go search YouTube and dig into this product and figure it out. And I'm like, yes, it's a nerdy passion about things. And I say that because I say that about myself. Like I want to learn about post-production, audio engineering, those kind of things. Like I'm in all the classes, I'm reading all the books, I'm listening to the podcasts. That's been kind of my spirit towards things. If we could find people who would do that in one or two areas, who are going to go out of their way, like that is attractive to me. That's who I want around me.
Yeah. And then it's our job as the people kind of in charge of that, or in charge of that leader, if you will, or that kind of manage that area of ministry, to then see those passions. Okay, he just got crazy about the lighting. Like that's going to be his role, is like the lighting role. We're not going to try to, oh, hey, try Pro Presenter and try audio and try this and try that, like try to get him just focused in on that one thing, get him really good at it. And then when he's naturally ready to take on the next thing, to go with the next thing after that. I think for sure I've done this plenty of times where, somebody comes in and is excited about, for instance, we had this kid that started live streaming with us a couple of years ago, and he just got pumped about it. He was really good at it and was going nuts. And my first thought was like, oh, he could do this really well too, and then that really well too, and then quickly it became overwhelming. Well, then I didn't see the kid again for a while, and I was like, oh, that's on me as the leader. Like I shouldn't have almost pushed him too far. I should just let him run with the things he's excited about, improve our ministry, improve our worship, because of those passions that he just naturally kind of found as he was getting involved. And I should have just helped him stay in that lane.
Yeah, and to me, a way to further develop that person rather than going wide, staying deep on their one or two things, then instead of, well, you could also do this and this and this because you're so passionate and you keep showing up and we love having you around. Instead of that, like here's 15 other things. To me, the next step is, all right, now you are the live stream coach. Now you are the lighting coach. Now, not only are you here to help set it up and create, now you get to teach other people who are interested. So that gives them more depth in the thing that they're wanting to be passionate about.
Right.
And this brings up another thing that I had said to you before, John, is you can teach people skills. You can't teach people work ethic. You can't teach people passion. So I might find somebody who likes to play on a phone and is passionate, who I can teach something in the tech area, who can bring that into that. I can teach him how to get started on screens or lights or whatever, but I cannot teach somebody who knows how to do lighting, who doesn't really care that much.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that maybe I would be good at that I wouldn't give myself to, because that's not where I'm interested. Right.
Right.
So I think it works both ways. Like there are many things that I tried to do because I was good at it, and being good at something means that you could probably get paid for it, but it's lackluster. It doesn't have that drive behind it. So when I'm looking for these people, a lot of it has to do with attitude, and just how they present themselves and how they show up.
Well, and I think of, just to tell your story a little bit, Nolan, like in my experience with you, when I first met you, you were a type of person that just dug in. You were naturally talented, but you just ran with it and you just did stuff. And I had to learn quickly at that point, I just got to get out of his way and like let him go, because he's very passionate about piano or keys or whatever it was, just leading worship in general, and just to get out of the way and let you run with things. And I know that that's, you know, a very rare instance to find somebody like that who just takes off and just runs with it with little work on like my end in that scenario. Like that's a great thing to have happen, but knowing that, recognizing that, being ready for that when it does happen, because it will happen. You know, there's times where in my experience, like I feel like I just kept hitting barriers and dead ends, and I'm like, oh, why isn't this person doing that, or why isn't this person doing that? Well, no, I have to change the way that I'm thinking about it. I have to think further outside the box. I have to tap different resources and talk to different people and get different people involved. I can't just hit it as a dead end and go, oh, volunteers are hard to find. Just how it is. Bummer. Like I have to keep doing this myself. Nope. Think further outside the box. Like what are some other options? Who are some other people you can talk to? One big one for us a few years back, there's a guy going to our church who worked for Sight on Sound. They're a sound company in town. Didn't even know who the guy was. Had no idea. Super nice guy. And finally, he just, he'd come around the booth every now and then and just kind of like look at what we were doing. And I just had never met him. We were always busy or crossing paths at the wrong time. And finally got to talking to him, and he just said, yeah, we're at Sight on Sound in town. I'm like, what? I was like, get in here and teach us stuff. Like, what are you serious? So again, and that was a lucky moment, but it's just always being open to having those conversations, and going, okay, there's going to be times where, oh, you have an IT background, but I have no idea what to do with sound. That's okay. You know how to tinker with things. You like to find solutions. You like to dig in and just help something work right. We can take those skills and those passions and put them into this place and into this role, and just let it blossom, let it go on its own.
Yeah, and I know we've mentioned this before too, but we just started having in-house youth programming again, and one of the kids his mom is active in our church, good kid, but he came in, he hadn't seen our new worship space yet, so he came into the tech booth I was getting things set up for recording the other night, and he's like, oh, I love those keyboards, because they're gaming keyboards that we have in there. And so I was like, yeah, I was like, yeah,
like computer keyboards.
Yeah. Sorry, I did not specify.
That's okay.
So then I was like, yeah, this computer here this is connected to all the visuals, the cameras, the TVs, the screens, and this goes here, just kind of, this is our video computer, this is our lights, this is our pro presenter, this is our soundboard. And he's like, oh, that's so cool. And I said, after the 5 weeks of this youth programming, if you ever want to come and just check it out, I'd love to show you around, and you could create a whole light show, or you could do this or whatever. And he's seventh grader. He's a seventh grader.
Wow.
But he's so excited. And I would just love to get him involved. And this is obviously a little selfishly like another person who could take this and run with it. But on the other side, I would not be here on this call today, or at this church, or married to my family, or anything, if it wasn't for somebody who took interest in me, in the things that I love to do in the church when I was this age.
Right.
I was a sixth grader when I started leading Sunday school music for kids from kindergarten all the way up to eighth grade. And it was
Yeah,
a
that's
little
awesome.
embarrassing because I was doing my thing and there were these cool big eighth graders, but it was there that it started. It was before that when I started in the choir. It was before that when somebody would ask me to sing a solo or to play for church or help serve at communion. It was people who invested in me and saw that I wanted to be around people and help that
Mhm.
that got me connected to the church to where I am today. And if it weren't
Yeah.
for that, I know this is a little bit segue, but
This is great.
we have to see whether it's a seventh grader like Jackson or a sixth or fifth grader like I was, or a guy in his 20s, 30s like Chris. Um, we've got to find those things and get them involved,
Yeah.
because that is going
Yeah.
to change their life forever, like it did for
Right.
us. And it might look differently, but that is going to shape who they are for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So it is there's this complex where you feel bad for asking people because we're all swamped.
Yeah.
But to not ask is potentially putting a barrier between who they are and who they could be.
Right. Don't
That,
say no for them.
right.
Yeah.
Don't assume. Like that's
Right.
just so important. So I hope that messaging gets across, that
Yeah.
you can, like, if they say no, it's maybe a not right now, but
Yeah.
at least it plants those seeds. Like, hey, I really see this in you, and I think that it'd be really neat to do this. I think it'd be really great if you would come help run screens, or I'd love to get you in and out of practice. You don't have to plug in, just come play your guitar.
Right.
And hang out with us. Or you are so friendly, would you ever like to greet people? That could change your ministry forever. It could change their life forever. And I just think that that's so important.
Yeah, that's really good. I was just this morning listening to a podcast. Totally drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was interviewing the CEO of Sonos, that sound company or sound product company. I don't use Sonos, but I know they're really popular. Like Bose, but they specialize in home theater systems. So like a speaker in every room, whatever. And he said, so how did you get started? Like, how did you become like, give me like your full story. And the guy said, in third grade, we had a computer installed at our school. And the guy, this random tech that was like, my teacher was in the room, but like this random tech that was there installing it, just said, hey, do you want to come try this? That's all he said. And he's like, sure, okay. And he was in third grade. And he like started just kind of playing around with this computer. And I don't remember what kind it was, and just started playing with it. And he said, that changed my life. Like seeing that experience and being asked to be involved in something. And then I was like the guy who like taught the teachers then how to like use this computer. I was a third grader. And he said, I got obsessed with software development after that and computers. And now he's a CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world. Like it was just such a cool story to hear. Like it was such a raw beginning, just such a random ask by an adult, by somebody else to just be involved and to give some importance to somebody.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah. Well, I think in the church, like it's exactly like you're saying. I mean, for that story, that went on to shape his career, and it very well could in the church too, but more so in the church, it's going to help shape their faith life as well. If they're involved in learning and growing and around other faithful adults, and people who are going to teach along the way, I think just what a great kind of natural mentorship system on top of building skills that could potentially go on to shape, their careers and the rest of their lives professionally. I think there's just a lot of wins in giving young people the shot.
Yeah. So to kind of sum this up in a few ideas, seek people out. Don't wait for them to come to you. Seek people out who have the attitude, the work ethic, the passion, not only for what they do, and sometimes not even for what they do. Seek people out, make the ask, and look for people who are there early and who are there late, who are asking how they can help. What else, John?
Yeah, that's about it. To sum it up, those were the two main ideas. I mean, as the leader, being you know being willing to make the ask, like I think you mentioned in there, we as church leaders sometimes feel like, oh, I feel like I'm bugging them, or I've asked them 18 times, or like you feel like you're that awkward church person trying to find volunteers. Like, don't get that out of your head. Yeah, don't be awkward, but get that out of your head. Get the idea of it being awkward out of your head, and just make the approach, make the ask, and don't say no for them.
And this got lost in a conversation we had before the Zoom. I was like, oh, we should be recording this. But I said the thing about you can't teach people work ethic and all these things. But something that you brought up, John, is that that you can still lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's one of those leadership things. Like, you should never ask your team to do something that you're not doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes
and not because you can't, like, don't know how to do it, but because because you're trying to do it, like, just because you're not doing it doesn't mean, you know what I mean? I want to make sure that's, maybe I didn't clarify that at all.
Yeah. What was that?
Oh, because you were saying, like, don't try to do the thing to show them that you would do it if you could do it, but you just can't, you know what I mean? Like, if you're hitting a wall, that's where then they could come in and figure out what the solution is and go further. Yeah.
I'm just like, you shouldn't ask you shouldn't be looking for people who are getting there early and staying there late if you as the leader are only being there for the bare minimum. Right. So there might be some people on the team who haven't quite realized about themselves. They're not going to learn it if you're not doing it as a leader. So that's all I was going. Like, just because they don't have those tendencies yet doesn't mean that they won't get there. Yes, we're looking for those people, but it also can be shown by the leader to help draw that out. Because I think ultimately every single human being wants to do well, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes they just don't know what that looks like. So John and I, as the leaders, we are there early, we're there late, we're picking up the trash around, making sure that it's a good place to be. Like, some of those leadership things are taught out as well. That's all I wanted to acknowledge, that you said that earlier. So that brings us to our second question, and this is again a multi kind of question into one direction. But one of the questions is, we are a traditional church. We play hymns, liturgy, in a sanctuary, those kind of things. And there are some younger families who are looking for a modern worship experience. But the people who worship traditionally don't like it, kind of thing. And the second question that I'm going to fuse into there is, I am a worship leader in a contemporary sense, in a modern sense, and how do you choose music? And all of these questions we could answer 400 different ways, because it's been 10, 15 years that we've been doing this. So we'll just kind of take it in this one direction. But yeah, I get it. We have a strong traditional service, and they aren't super fond of some of the things we do in our more modern service. John, when he started it at Good Shepherd, was the hard rock guy,
heavy metal
guy, with his bald head and his acoustic guitar.
It's been a running joke. Somebody called me Heavy Metal John, like, in my first few months here, and we always joked about it ever since.
So I totally get that.
That's how I lost my hair. I was headbanging too hard.
Right.
Can you imagine me? Oh my gosh. I'm like so far from heavy metal. It's not even funny. Anyway.
But the mullet helped for sure.
Yeah.
And so this all brought me to this epiphany that I had. I was driving my kids to drop them off, and we had a 30-minute drive, and something that I do on my car rides is, instead of the kids like to have music on, and so sometimes I take that opportunity to listen to songs in playlists so I can figure out what we're going to go to next. And I think this captures a lot of what we're talking about here. So I had the playlist set. I hadn't listened to it yet. There were songs that I wanted to explore, and we're going, and I'm listening, and I was like, oh, this is annoying. I don't like this song. This is way too cool for me. And, kind
So
of
it's stuff that
the
like,
churches are out there doing.
so it's like new church music that was on that playlist. Okay.
Music, yeah.
Okay.
And very synthy and futuristic kind of stuff. And I hope I'm not selling this short. But it's catchy, but just like, oh, that's not really what I look for. It seems, I don't know. But my kids were like, well, what is this? And then it'd be the next song, and they'd be moving back there in the back seat. And I had this epiphany. Like, it just like, that is why churches are doing this music. It's not for me, a 31-year-old. It is for the kids. It is for the future generations.
Right.
And so I started having this conversation, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to draw out these questions that we've been getting, is that as a worship leader, and I play the organ and I lead the modern services, when I'm choosing modern songs, I cannot choose only for myself. I am choosing so that we have kids and high schoolers who are engaged in worship. And maybe it's not something that I love, but if it's going to get that next generation of Christians into churches, and even more than that, out into the world with the philosophy of building Christ's church here on earth, that is what we're here for. And so it's not this me and God vertical thing. It's this horizontal thing where what we're doing now is going to change the church forever. And so that is the conversation that I need to be having better with the traditional folks who are not enjoying. I love me some traditional music. I love playing the organ. I love the liturgies that I remember growing up, but it's not necessarily going to translate to what high schoolers are looking for today. And if you can talk to somebody who is not pleased with that direction, my conversation is, what do you see the church being like after you're gone? What are you giving to the next generation? What are you giving to your grandchildren? What does it look like? Are they going to be here? Is that important to you? The church that you have given your offering to? Because that comes up a lot, at least for us. Like, we spent money on this church. We give an offering. We want the traditional service. And the traditional service isn't going anywhere, right? But do you want this to be a building? Do you want this to be a movement where your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren are engaged like you have been your faithful life? And that is what is going on when I'm choosing music. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You want to dial that in for me?
No, it's really good. It's really good. And it's so hard, because you're dealing with emotion and traditions of people for years, and the song that might have really brought them to God 25 years ago. Or, I would say when I was back when I was Heavy Metal John, like, there was a time where I'm like, no, I don't want to do that hymn because it's, I wouldn't get mad, but I was like, oh, I'd be more like bummed. And I've had to kind of grow into it over the years, where we do hymns in contemporary worship now. Like, we don't call it blended. It's contemporary worship. Like, and we kind of redo how the hymn goes. It sounds similar. It's just not done on organ or just piano. Like, we'll do, and beer and hymns, obviously, when we started doing that kind of moved things along in that direction too. But it's hard. It's hard to have those conversations. I think it's really important to have those conversations very direct. I've been blessed to have a lead pastor that walks through that with people, and that talks through that. Oh, you're not happy that we're not doing that as traditional as we used to, or, whatever it is. Well, let's talk about it. And having those conversations, and that can be from us as worship leaders, that can be from your lead pastor. I think not just kind of ignoring it. Nope, we got to do this, that we got to do that, but actually hearing them out and listening. And even if you end on a disagreement, and this is where we have to head as the church. I'm sorry you don't agree with this. I'm sorry you don't enjoy this. But this is what we're doing. I think is huge. And I think it doesn't make it any easier though. Like, I think that helps bring people along in a longer term, maybe, and helps people understand it a little bit more of the why. It's not just because the church is like made up of young, people who don't care about tradition anymore. That can be the perspective, like how it looks on the outside. But until you have the conversation, no, we're very thoughtful on why we do this. I love Amazing Grace, Beautiful Savior, How Great Thou Art. Like you were saying, like I love those. I grew up on those too. So it's not about getting rid of them just to get rid of them at all. It's like you've been talking about, Nolan, like what does the future of the church look like? Your kids getting excited in the back seat about kind of this poppy Christian song. That says something. You can't ignore that. Like if that's something that, and you're a worship leader, so they're hearing Christian music all the time. But if they're seeing, or if they're hearing this, we joke kids boppy, kind of Christian music, like, okay, what does that mean? And what does that actually mean for us as the church? Not that we're going to go hardcore techno this week at all, but do we start making steps where things are a little more upbeat, or things sound a little different, or we put a different kind of keyboard in there, or like what are some of those ways to implement then into our setting specifically? I'm imagining whoever wrote those is probably a Hillsong, or probably Hillsong Kids. Like they have a whole department, a whole team they created specifically to make kids music, so kids would be in a Christian music atmosphere at home, like on YouTube or wherever they're watching that. We turn it on every now and then at home. Abe's dancing around too. So it's thinking about that, like how do we do this?
And those lyrics get stuck in their heads when they're catchy to the young kids. And those are the things when they're back in the shower or whatever that they're going to be singing at home. They might not have picked up on too much of the message of that day, but they'll be going home and, singing, "He is alive," whatever.
Right.
Where that starts to make shifts in themselves for forever again.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And our chat today is a lot about making changes forever. I love it.
Yeah.
And that brings up
and being thoughtful in it, I think there's always the question of, well, why are they changing? Or like, why does it even need to change? Like, what change is just kind of the trigger word of like, no, I liked it how it was. And it's not just to change it, but like, what is the very intentional, what's the human experience right now? Things keep changing, and the rate of change is increasing quickly, especially with technology. They're getting ready to shoot a spaceship to Mars soon with people on it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have to be real with the times when it comes to how and why we do these things, and not just because they're sending a spaceship to Mars, but like because of this whole, there's just a lot of change happening. And we as the church, just to speak very generally, have to keep changing and evolving to be able to connect with people.
This reminds me of a story. This happened in 2019 because we didn't have church last year, or in-person worship. But he's a retired pastor, often would be greeting and ushering at our Saturday night services, which was really laid back and pretty calm, did a lot of traditional music, some newer ones, but kind of tone it down a little bit. And always critical, like too loud, too fast, not traditional enough, didn't do this prayer right, kind of old pastory kind of conversations. And he said, you know what, you should come to worship at camp this summer. We're during the summers we go and do worships on the lake. And he came to a service and there were 600-700 people. And afterward, he came up to us and said, I get it now. I get it now. He has not had a complaint since. Every time I see him, he's like, you're doing such a great job. But what changed? What was that shift? He went from a service of 40 people where everything is dying. It's not growing, it's not reaching people. There's never anybody new there, to a service that had 600-700 people he's never seen before, kids dancing, enjoying, being in this Christian community, taking communion, confessing their faith, those things. And he didn't know those people. And that was, all of a sudden he connected, like, I see what you're doing now, because it's leading to this. It's leading to these lives that are being changed. And maybe I don't like it. He can still do that. Maybe this isn't something that I'm a fan of. There are services for me that I would appreciate, kind of the whole rigmarole a little bit better. But I see why you're doing all of this. Yeah. And all of a sudden he was on board. And that's it made a huge impact on me too. Because as leaders, it's easy to forget sometimes what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think to tie it together too, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you and I have always had the similar philosophy on how do we connect the two and not connect them, but how do we bring kind of some traditional music into that new setting? How do we give some different life to? One of my favorite things to do is, like, after we're singing a new contemporary tune, is just tagging it, meaning we put right in the very end of it, we'll start singing Amazing Grace, we'll start singing Holy, 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 or we'll have a moment where I think, and this is for me personally, but I think what happens in that moment is some of the older people in the room go, oh, yeah, we know this one, and it just kind of, then there's a moment within that other moment, and like something happens there where suddenly, you're able to connect with some of the traditions of our church. I in no way want to get rid of tradition in our church. It's why we are where we are today and how we got to where we are today. I absolutely love it. But
I think there's this whole, like, for whatever reason, because we're a diverse world, that we have to choose sides. Yeah. You're either full bore heavy metal John, or you are organ, hymnals, liturgy, Concordia choir, on the other side. Doesn't matter which side is which. And I can tell you, for me and for John, worship is just worship.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if there's a guitar or a drum or an organ or a pan flute. If it is praising God and it is bringing us together to worship the God Most High, then that is worship. And so as worship leaders, what we're doing is bringing that all together. This song speaks to this. This moment will lead to this. Like, that is why we're here doing what we're doing. Right.
And that division is so real. I mean, those are a majority of the conversations we have with churches right now are, well, we're very traditional, so we can't do this. Or we're very contemporary, so we don't do the traditional stuff. And it's interesting seeing that there is both, and that both happen. And it's just, how do you work in your context, in your setting, with your team, to all get on the same page, or at least a similar page? It's going to take time to shift and change that culture. But just being open with it, trying new things, being willing to try new things, I think is a big deal.
Just as we close out here, because this has been just a fascinating conversation, and I've really enjoyed today. But since I said we're talking about music selection, that's not the only thing, right? There are a lot of things. Again, we're not going to name them all, but hearing it on the radio, if family who's into modern worship can leave church and then be driving to the grocery store and hear it on the radio on a Tuesday or whatever, that is important. That is a part of it, right? So it reinforces the message. It teaches. I'm teaching in worship, that's teaching them, so they're like, yeah, I know that one.
Right.
That's something that's important to me. Singability. I'm not a huge fan of repetition all of the time. I like changes. I like key changes. I like complexity in the music that I prefer. But as a worship leader, I am teaching people things. So if it's something that repeats itself a few times, a chorus that's singable, and easy to catch on. Maybe the verses are a little tougher and they'll kind of bop their heads and listen to the music and reflect on the message. And then they're like, oh yeah, the chorus, I know that. So that's important. Theme and theology and all these things. I'm not going to sing a song that says God hates you. Like that's important to me, right? So those are things. There's a lot of it. What is the pastor preaching on? What is the worship series that we're doing for 3 weeks, 4 weeks? What is the ultimate message? How does it tie into that? So those are a few more things that are important to me. Not everything, but some good starts to it. Can I sing it? Can we play it? Just some practical things as well, right?
Can we lead this well? Don't just pick something that just sounds awesome on the radio and then you get to rehearsal and go, oh my gosh, like how do we pull this off?
I don't even have
you and I have been in that situation.
I don't even have a drummer and this has 3 drummers, like
our drummer says that a lot because we do a lot of Ren Collective and he's like, dude, I heard 3 drums in that recording, like there's no way. And I'm like, no, you can do it, just have fun with it.
So anything else?
That's a really good list. I don't think I have much more than that. You hit the radio thing, the kind of the week-long idea or goal or opportunity. Singability is huge for me, and I would take that. I think this is a unique moment that separates kind of you from I even knowing, because you're such a good instrumentalist and you work really well with guitars and keyboards and like in the inside of the song. And what my passion is, and this is yours as well, but what my passion is like the singing of it and the leading of the room and how does the congregation come along. And I know that you said that. So I think, my absolute favorite moment in worship is when like the band backs out and the room is just singing. Absolutely. And that you've like, I don't know why this image just came in my head, but I thought about like tubing, you like, say you pull and pretend that the tube got cut or something and like they go flying on their own because you like stop, you let it up until that point and then they just follow along. Like that's the whole goal of it all. So if the line is singable, if it's easy to do, and sometimes we've done songs that are new and the singer does all these runs and it's just, crazy kind of poppy version of it. And we'll simplify that a little bit. Like I won't do all the runs as I'm leading it because I want them to be able to sing it as well and feel comfortable lifting their voice up in a room, which I think has gotten harder in this day and age. This is probably a whole other video, but in this day and age, I feel like it's gotten harder for groups to sing along. Like unless you're at a concert and you're just, you're there because you love Bruno Mars, of course you're going to sing 24 Karat Magic. But like, I feel like I just listened to that this morning. That's in my head. But I feel like if you're still have to try that. Now I'm thinking about Abe was dancing so hard to Bruno Mars this morning. Anyways,
leading worship and going to a concert where everybody knows that song because they follow that person. This is us like teaching and leading out. That is our job as worship leaders.
And getting them to do it and knowing that. I think in today's age, that's where I was going. I think that it's like you're standing next to a stranger, or maybe you know them kind of well, maybe sort of, but you're in church and you grew up going to church and you grew up, not really talking to people maybe in church, and like how and why are you going to sing then? Like how can we then as leaders create an atmosphere, create a culture, create a space where you feel like, oh, I can sing this, even if you're not a singer, and and that's hard. That's like the beautiful challenge of it all, is like, how do we pick music that's going to connect and encourage people to worship together in a space?
So summing that up, how do we choose music? How do you choose good music for worship? Singability, in no important order. Singability, your ability to execute, the ability to hear it on the radio if they're listening to those channels, and so that it teaches them and connects with them all week long. And how is it going to engage the next generation to make it an everlasting attempt? So I think those are kind of the main points that we had, and we just want to thank you for joining us today. See you next week. Make sure you find us on, you have the graphic, right, John?
Not right here.
Right here.
Oh, maybe I do. Maybe I do.
You can find us on Facebook and YouTube, Red River Leadership. And again, thanks for joining us for questions and answers. You've got questions and we've got answers.
Or we will try our best.
Boom. That was my tagline. I worked so hard on that.
That was good. That was really good.